record button. And all right, well, so I will start here about, let me tell you what I'm talking about. Can you see my, can you see my screen? Yes? No, you cannot. Oh, no.
Not yet, no.
Nope,
I
not
have
yet.
to hear. Never mind. Okay. Now you can see, yes? Okay.
Yep.
So here's my whole thing. Here's my whole angle on things is like, I've been trying to figure out, like, as you read all these books, and as some of you know, like, you know, I'm new to academia. I've been working in industry for a long time. And I've been trying to figure out, as you learn all these books and you read about all this active learning stuff, what does it apply? You know, you don't see a lot of, how does it apply to technology or computer science or engineering instruction? So really this talk is about how I've been trying to evolve what I do in the classroom. This summer I came across a paper by Philip Johnson out of University of Hawaii. He talks about this athletic approach to software engineering education. So I'm like, what am I doing? And by the way, it hit right in the middle of the summer. I didn't have time to, you'll see it, to really fold it in yet. So how can I evolve a little more towards what some of his ideas? So let me describe the path a little bit. So particular teaching technology, teaching computer science in particular, there's this huge amount of debris that students have to get through in order to learn technology. We don't have time to go over all the technology stuff and all the syntax and all the rules. And that's not where we want them to be anyway. We have to push them through all these technical syntax and grammars and how statements are constructed, so we can get them to solving problems. Because from a taxonomy viewpoint, and this is from Philip Johnson's paper, where he applies Bloom's taxonomy specifically to software engineering. We operate a lot at, you know, the knowledge level is really like trying to understand the difference between the exact syntax and the difference between those three statements. Students just need to know what the difference between equal, 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 and equal, equal, equal are. And they mean something very dramatic. If they don't know, they can't solve problems. So we have to get them from the point of where they have to get the syntax exact, and they can't leave out a parentheses, and it's single quote, not double quote. And, you know, you got to get the right, it's all this, you know, debris that they have to get through. And we have to get them from that knowledge level to, in most cases, especially a lot of the early classes, to the application level. Senior, maybe later classes are more evaluation and synthesis, but we're doing a lot of stuff about solving problems. So early on, they just need to know syntax, and they need to be able to know, they need to learn language or technology very quickly. And maybe later they can start to evaluate, like, when do I use the if statement versus the switch statement, or an object or an array of objects? Like, when do I put things together? How do I use that? That might be the comprehension level. But in almost all my, certainly up the 3,000 level classes, I'm trying to get them to apply what they're learning to solve problems, to solve problems of different sizes. So you know, as a software engineering professor or professional for, you know, 30 years, this education process has changed a lot. I remember when we all had stacks of books, and every single software engineer had a library of books. This is how old I am, where I was working, my employer proactively bought everyone the C programming language book and gave it to us, because it was like, that's how you learned. And it was all dog-eared, and you had folded over pages, and you knew where all the syntax were. Quickly, you know, over time, that the internet replaces that, ebooks comes around, and that become more efficient. It's easier to look things up. And more recently, in the last 10 years or so, as a professional, you're watching, when you need to learn things, you don't even have time to go to the book. You're watching online tutorials, and you're doing YouTube, and you're watching quick videos. And so my process, when I thought about it, was kind of this. I needed to learn a new technology, and I needed to maybe start the next project on it, or I needed to learn how to work in a project like that. I'd watch a tutorial, and then I would twist it in some way. Like, I'd get the thing working, and then I would twist it in some way so that to kind of check my understanding. So I got the tutorial, got the examples to work, and then I would have it do whatever it was doing. I'd have it do a little bit differently. Then I would either do another tutorial if I needed it, or I would, after I started to work on something, I might be able to build something simple off of that. And once I had that foothold, then I could apply it to a big project. So there's this watch a 20-minute video, get all the code to work. It might take me 2 hours to do that. Get it to do something different. Do I have enough to start a project? So there's all this sort of assessment. This has changed so much in the time that I've been there, because back in the day I was looking up, I knew what page 42 was in the C programming language, for example. That's what my classes look like when I studied. The professor, actually, they probably had dry eraser, and they were writing code on the board, and we didn't even have laptops back in the day. But when we talk about a lecture format in computer science, it's probably going over all these, reading code to students, trying to get them to understand, which is very low risk from the professor's standpoint. It's very easy to teach this way, but the students don't get anything out of it that way. So this doesn't work as a pedagogy, as a way to teach students, at least computer science. So what I switched to fairly quickly is what I call the Code Along class, which is inspired. It's a YouTube inspired class. This is how we were doing it back. I would start with something that on the right, I have it worked out already. It's on my second screen. And I would sometimes I give students stubs of programs. And sometimes we start from the beginning. I go, okay, let's open a program. And what we're going to solve is I'll show them what it's working. This is the program working. And we're going to get from point A to point B almost without a slide and almost without any concepts. I mean, I'm showing them the concepts as they go along. So if they need to see what a loop does, well, we're going to write a program that incorporates a loop, and it's going to have to loop in order to do that. So I'd show them that syntax while we're going along. This Code Along class has pretty much, so the idea is that the students are coding with me. So if you dropped in my class, even over Zoom, I would estimate that 95% of the students are coding along, trying to get the example to work at the same time I am. So there's this very active class from that standpoint of them. If I when I type it in and I explain it, they're typing it in and they're trying to get it to work. And so they're very engaged in the class. They're very much invested in trying to get the little example to work. And they encounter the problems, and I encounter problems in class. Like I do something wrong or I miss something, and they're on there correcting me, or they're saying, hey, my code's not working. I swear I got the same thing you do. So they share their screen, and the whole class tries to figure out why that student isn't getting it right. So there's this very, process of like, everyone needs to get this to work. So this works very well over Zoom. I mean, this takes a fair amount of time to plan, because I'm not just running things out of the book. I'm trying to get examples that will teach this particular concept. It's like, because the books don't lay stuff out this way. Students still need to like extract what the main idea is. This is like, I call it like playing along the instructor while you're trying to learn piano. You still got to practice piano, and you still got to like figure out where that, what the main idea is. But, and they still need to take notes. So in my, the way I teach now is I actually make them take notes, and I make them hand them in weekly. And the notes should be like, what are the main points of the class? What are the syntaxes you need to know? Things like that. So I have to pull that out of them to get something out of that class. So the Code Along reactions have been extremely positive. I mean, I've surveyed over 150 students now. I've been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. They love doing it's productive, it's efficient. It helps them concentrate. They're not drifting in code. When I say they're not drifting at all, because I'm not lecturing. If I throw up 2 or 3 slides, I stop. That's enough. It helps them encounter the syntax while we're in class, rather than when they're trying to do this later. Like, oh, what does that parenthesis do again? Oh, that's what it is. Or I don't understand the syntax. So their stuff breaks in real time. But I still think if code along is like what the instructor is here, like helping you show how to do it, I still have to get them to the recital. I still have to get them to like synthesize all this and learn how to do it themselves, because they probably are just relying on me for the most part. So I came up with this idea of a half-baked cake. I don't even know if this is a real thing. It's like a cooking show. So in a cookie, so the lesson might be, we might code along for half a class. And then I'll say, okay, we got to this part, get rid of the blue area, make that header 2 centered to the right, add a logo there, and make the footer, this instead of that. And that's the class. So the second part of the class, so I might be giving them all of it or part of it. And the second part of the class is them just messing around with it, usually on a Friday, because then I go, okay, if you didn't get it done by Monday, right? So your job is to get it done by Monday. So this is very hands-on. Students, it gives them another way to interact with the material. It helps them to synthesize things. It still works well over Zoom. I can put them in groups, and say, here, okay, you can work with 3 people. It takes a lot of time and planning, because I'm coming up with half of a lesson that they can do, and I need to figure out how far the putt is for them to get it done. And there is always, the people who struggle on one end and the people who are really fast on the other end, and you have to give enough variations so that you keep everyone busy, right? So these 2 things I've been doing for a while, and trying to interleave together. And the reactions to these kind of lessons have been really strong too. They like the combination because they can follow along and then they can take it the rest of the way. So the variation helps them. It helps them get more out of the class. It helps them try to apply things individually. It helps them to create bigger things, try to synthesize material. And the comments have been very strong on the half-baked. I survey them like 3 times a year as I go through these things. So I get a lot of feedback. So basically the way that I'm working a couple of my classes now, it might be Monday, Wednesday, code along. We're just coding along. And you might come in my class and go, oh, they're just coding along. There's nothing happening on Monday. Okay, well, no, they're trying to build these. I'm trying to get them to build the fundamentals so that on Friday I can give them a half-baked cake or something that they could build a little bigger on. So it's small, small, small and big, small and medium. I still need to, like every other week, they have low stakes quizzes on these fundamentals, recognize all the syntax and what's the difference between this statement and this statement. So I let them take the quizzes as many times as they need to till they just get the fundamentals down, because I don't have time for them to, in these classes, for them to practice. They have to practice it themselves. And then we have, like every other week, a homework that is bigger. It makes them synthesize a couple weeks of activity. And so the idea is to like try to synthesize this in an even larger problem or project that puts things together. And a problem still emerges is that, they still don't really study these, I think, is to the degree I need them to practice. I need them to be practiced. I think it's like playing an instrument. It's like you need to be out there to be practicing these fundamentals so that you can get them down enough so that you can solve a bigger problem out of it. If they're wading through the details of the fundamentals of the language or the technology we're learning, and they're stuck on some syntax, they just get hung up, and it's very frustrating for them. So it helps vary things a lot. And I was actually thinking about this problem this summer of like, how can I get them to practice more? How can I get them to like get better at the fundamentals while trying to synthesize that and build a bigger solution? When I came across this paper by Philip Johnson, who published it last year, about how he was applying what he calls this athletic framework on teaching he calls it a large technology stack. So he teaches software engineering, and in a software engineering, he teaches a web framework, and the web framework has, maybe if I'm teaching a language, maybe I have one language to deal with. He might have like 4 or 5 different technologies. He's got to get the students through so they can use it, this tremendously powerful technology. But there's a lot of details, a lot of stuff that the students have to wade through in order they can leverage this tech stack. And so he's doing this in 1 semester, this athletic framework. So here is so what he does in his paper is that he divides the semester into two pieces, where the first part, because he's trying to get them to learn the tech stack and then apply it, okay, to solve some big problem. And his athletic framework is that he breaks them into the first part, and he organizes what he calls workouts of the days. And they go through a series of workouts that he pulls out the fundamental that he's trying to learn. And I'll give you more about that in a second. And then the second part of the semester, he uses he lets them go ahead and develop their project. So he's reporting that students greatly prefer that over traditional based pedagogies, but go figure. I mean, traditional, that's, students will fall asleep during those, but they will do many practiced workout of the days that and he actually, what I like about his idea here is that he is defining what does it mean to have the fundamental concept down. And he says that you have this concept down when you can solve a problem in this space in this amount of time. So I might give them a problem, and it might take them 4 days, and they might have had their older brother help them, and their uncle who's in a programmer help them, and they say, well, they've got it down because I got it done in this amount of time, and it needed all this help. He would say, here is a fundamental skill. You should be able to solve this problem in 15 minutes. And if you don't have that skill, if you can't solve in 15 minutes, then you have not mastered that skill. So so here's the way he does it. He structured the curriculum along of a series of skills to be mastered. So this is, in order to get this framework going, you have these skills that you have to master. And he creates a workout of the day problem for each of the skills that have to be mastered. So then he'll have a video which has the solution, and he'll say to the student the students that you have to be able to solve this problem in, say, 15 minutes. And then he allows time for them to practice in groups in class. And then I'm sorry, so he gives them time to practice it outside of class, and then he gives them some time inside of class in groups. And they all try to see how quickly they can solve the problem. Then he will test them through an all or nothing mastery of the skill. To get the point, he'll give them a different problem, and you have to be able to solve that problem in that 15 minutes. If it takes you 20 minutes, you get a 0 for that skill. It's an all or nothing test of mastery. So here's a fundamental skill. You either have that skill or not. So he repeats that skill over skill that they're trying to teach. So, I mean, I like this idea. It defines what mastery is, which is what I wasn't doing well. And it puts pressure on them, which is similar to the type of thing they're going to get in the real world when they get whiteboarded after when they say, you go to an employer and say, can I work here? They say, okay, show me how you can solve this problem. It's active. The students are engaged in helping each other to get things through. It will take some time for me to like pull out how, if I can implement it. It's kind of a do or die system. So I'm going slowly about how I'm going to implement this. The students report that it reduces distraction. It helps them focus. It helps them define what they're trying to get out of the class. Okay. So what I did is, initially this semester, this happened in July, I started thinking about this paper and how I could implement it. So what would happen if I introduced what I called workout of the week instead of workout of the day? So the workout of the week is maybe we don't have a half baked, we have a workout of the week, and I give them an assignment and I say, your job is to be able to solve this problem in 15 minutes. Now I'm not giving them to come back on Monday and report back how long it took to them. So I'm just taking them at their word for now that they can solve that problem in that amount. However, I'm telling them my expectation is that you can solve that problem in that amount of time. And when the test comes around, you will have a series of problems. You might have any one of these problems that I would expect that you could do 2 of them in an hour, for example. So I'm trying to define for them what the definition of mastery is, and that they will be tested on it. I haven't gone to the all or nothing system yet, but that's the way I've been trying to implement this. And their homework then will still go beyond this. It'll take a couple of wows, what I call them, to complete the homework, and they're not supposed to start the homework until they complete the workouts, right? So if they come to me and they're all wrapped around the axle, I would ask them, how long did you get that done? Were you able to do that in 15 minutes? And sometimes they say no, right? So without getting into the details, this is what it might look, and if there's computer science people here, then they would recognize this, but I would give them half a problem and I'd say, okay, you need to write this center section. That's really all it is I give them like, here's the problem. And I would give enough comments there that you need to write that center section, and I'd give them an RX time, and you should be able to solve that in 15 minutes. So it's very specific, it's very problem centric, it's very similar to the type of thing they might get into a whiteboarding session if they were called for a job interview. So far, the comments, of the 30 or so students that I've taught this, really like this variation. I think they like the fact that I'm defining what mastery is. There actually are students that say, please, honest to goodness, this is their comments, please give me more of these exercises. Please define for me what I'm supposed to be getting out of here, I think is what it is. I think it's this, the comments have been overwhelmingly positive about, they're not hard, they just have to pull together all the syntax, all the fundamentals to solve them. So I'm giving them simple little things, but they're need to get them done in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, right? So I'm trying to define to them how they can get that first level of the taxonomy done, so that they can then solve bigger problems. Conclusions, I don't know. This is a work in progress to me. I'm trying to synthesize how to get all this to work and how to get this to work between this, in this taxonomy. And it seems to me that it's filling a niche down here somewhere of helping them at the comprehension level before they get to the application level. There's been so many, I've said over the years, so many students come to me like trying to apply a homework, a bigger problem, and it's clear to me they don't have the level 1, the knowledge level that they need to solve the problem. So they jump right into the homework, they get all wrapped around the axle, and before you know it, they're changing majors. Like I can't do this. It's crazy making to me, right? So I think this can fill a niche, this wow or work out of the day concept. I'm considering over this, over the next summer, probably I won't have time to do it in the fall, spring, but taking it to another level and designing a series of maybe work out of the days type thing that would say, these are clear skills that you have to have, and we're going to test you on this, your mastery of those skills, and basically flip the class the way Philip Johnson is talking about, where there might be a video that explains how to solve the problem, and you have to first try to solve the problem. You get stuck, watch the video, then continue to repeat that until you have the problem solved. I don't know. That's in a nutshell, that's kind of where I'm at on this. That's my discovery of this idea that Philip Johnson has. I don't know who all's on here, but I don't know if you have had any experience in technology. I don't know if you have any comments on it, but that's kind of my conclusion on it, if that makes sense.
I can say, Dave, this is something that's become an interest of mine and Sebastian as well. We've been talking for at least 2 years now about how to put more programming into the work that we do.
Yeah.
And I think I've settled on exactly sort of this kind of structure, sort of these smaller type projects. And that's sort of where I've landed, but sort of the right format alongside the math content is still what I'm really working on. So I'm excited.
So we'll be like in class, we'll be just like coding along, and it looks kind of rather than saying, here's the format of the statements, and here's the general format and all the variations and all that. We'll just encounter them in code, right? Mm-hmm. And then they have to go take it and apply it, as part of the, but I like this. He's got this, I don't know, he's got this all or nothing idea that is a little scary to me, but I'll be honest. I think he's on to something there. I think that they're using this in their classes now for the last, he said it, according to the paper, I've got a reference to the paper there. They've been using it for like 4 or 5 years now, and the students seem to be embracing that as a way to flag what the important skills are, mm-hmm. and get them down to the level where they can just code it, right? Which is kind of what you want. So I don't know.
I really love, David, that your pedagogy is evolving in this way. And it might seem to you like it's going backwards, but it's like you were operating at this mastery level, and then now you're backing into the skills that need to be taught.
Yeah.
And that identification of those skills is a really important element in your thinking, because as a master, you don't really know what students don't know anymore. You don't maybe have the insight about what students need to learn. And it sounds like it's just a great way to have gone about it.
That's another thing that I like about his paper and about the idea is that I hadn't thought about it that way. Like, that's what we're doing, right? Identify the fundamental skills the students need to have, and then give them paths to go get that, so that they could get to the level, and again, if it's a course, maybe it's the level 3 that we need to get them at. Maybe it's an early class. I need to be able to get them to solve problems. But, and it sounds obvious, but there's so much in the languages, there's so much technology that they have to get through. It's hard to, it's hard to get them there without defining a path for them, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing I do like about it, like I said, is like it does define what mastery is. You might have a different definition, but it's defining for the student what mastery is. And so I think I think that's a good concept to have, at least in technology instruction. I don't know about math, but math, it might be the same thing. Like, you should be able to do this and twist it that way, right?
That's what Ami was talking about in another session earlier today. Like, they have to have these building blocks to be able to function. So this is exactly what you're doing. Yeah.
So
it's a great
So there it
presentation,
is.
Dave. Thank
all
you.
right, thanks.
Yeah, I'll be reaching out in December.
No, Dave Maloney, he's got to work it all the way through.
I'm still working it. I don't know. I don't think I'll always be working on it. I just am like playing with it. So
It's a mark of a great teacher.
there you go. All right, thank you. We'll see you back at the
Thanks.
main.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Glad to see you make it. We're at the end. We're at our last presentation of the day, and I think it's one that many of you have been waiting for. We've been sticking around for. I'm so pleased to be able to introduce my colleagues, Jerry Tallman and Matt Crystal, who are going to talk to you about the Coffee Lab and the broader project that surrounds the Coffee Lab. Just as a last bit of housekeeping, I put the link to the Coffee Lab in the chat. It also appears on your program, so you're able to find more information there. I also dropped a link to the evaluation form. We will be sending an email out to everybody who registered or everybody who came to the conference today in a couple of days, probably Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, and we'll put that link again for the evaluation form. But if you're the kind of person who wants to do it tonight, right, as it's fresh in your mind, I wanted you to have that. Again, it is also in your program. Okay, without further ado, I will turn it over, even though we're a couple minutes ahead of schedule. We left 45 minutes for this presentation. I'll let Jerry and Matt decide the degree to which they want to split up their presentation and time for Q&A, or whether they'd like you to just interrupt them with question and answer. So without further ado, Jerry and Matt.
Hi, welcome. I'm Matt Crystal. I'm a professor of anthropology here at North Central College and one of the advisors to the Anactus project, and do quite a bit of work here in the Coffee Lab. We thought that you ought to see us together here with our masks on in the lab, so no one would think that I wasn't here or Jerry wasn't here. We're here. There's the roaster. So that we can take our masks off, though, however, I'm going to retire to another room here in a moment. And while I go up there, Jerry's going to tell you a little bit about the equipment here in the lab, and then we're going to get to what the abstract is on and as to what Caliendo was saying here. I think both of us like it when we're interrupted with good questions. So don't worry about doing that. If you have any questions and need some clarification from us, we're happy to do that. And that's what I have for the moment, and I will see you all in a little bit here.
And I'm Jerry Tallman, as Matt said, and I teach accounting here. I'm an associate professor in accounting, and I've been working on the coffee project with Matt for almost for over 15 years now. And wanted to just give a little bit of a tour of where we're at here. Again, we are in a coffee lab that was opened in May of 2019. So I guess over half of the time so far we've been in some kind of COVID restrictions, but we've been working on it we've been open since then. What we have here a little bit, and I don't know how good you're gonna be able to see it, but we do have a coffee roaster. We've been with the project much longer than last year. We started in 2005, but we will tell you a little bit how we got there as we get in here. We are one of only 3 schools in the country that we know of that even have coffee labs on campus. Oh, Matt's gone. I can get rid of my mask. I forgot. With the coffee roaster, will roast. We can do 18 pounds at a time, and we can do basically roast as much as we need, but it is more of a lab, and therefore we don't treat it as strictly a business. We do a number of things with it. The roaster was donated to us by Probat, one of probably the biggest and most accomplished coffee roaster company in the country, and then in the world, I should say. And we also have other parts of the lab, and I'm not sure how much we can see here, especially with me in the middle, but we teach students just from the practical standpoint. They have to learn all aspects of the coffee lab. We have different brewing methods. We have, besides the roasting, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. Bun manufacturing has been very generous to us in that case as well. So we do have equipment that for the grinding and all of that type of thing that has been contributed significantly by donors from outside. With that, we have other aspects of it, but the majority of our project with the coffee is around research around the roaster and the business aspects from there. And I see that Matt is back in San Lucas now. And did you want to start with the slideshow then, Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. I have a little bit of a looping video behind me of a coffee plot on the edge of a ravine. And there's a part of me, more than a little part of me, that wishes I were there. But we're going to go ahead and work through some of the things that we had here in our presentation. And hopefully the echo isn't too bad in this room. I had to move from the original place size, the connection wasn't very good there. But we're going to go ahead and share the screen here and work through some of the features that we have in terms of working with students here. So what we're going to talk to you about is we already had a little bit of an introduction here. We're going to focus a bit on the coffee supply chain, how the coffee gets to the lab from San Lucas Toliman. That is on Lake Atitlan in Highland, Guatemala. We'll talk briefly about the history of the lab and how which is really a condensed history of the coffee program here. And then we're going to move into the skills and competencies that our students are acquiring in their work with us in the lab. And then we have our invitation to collaborate. And I don't mean Blackboard collaborate, I mean actually collaborate. And what we're hoping there is to work with other institutions and also with secondary ed students in ways that take full advantage of what having a full coffee production facility on our campus provides. So that's our outline. We'll jump into next here. Jerry's going to talk to us a little bit about our supply chain.
Okay, originally our project was mostly about marketing and selling coffee out of Guatemala, but over the years it has evolved into where our project goes across the whole supply chain. From the original, we go and meet the farmers regularly twice a year, as we say in a couple places here, and work with them about their issues that they're having in the coffee industry, and we discuss ours. So we go all the way from where we make the purchase work with the farmers in Guatemala, work with how to get the coffee here, how to market it, how to make sure the quality is there. So what we've done is we now have our project that does go across the full supply chain, where we've been developing relationships and getting to know the people throughout in this direct trade project that we're doing. The picture here is of farmers and students and people along the way for this project.
So the coffee is produced in the Atitlan region in Highland, Guatemala, in a town called San Lucas Toliman. San Lucas is a predominantly Cachiquel Maya indigenous community. Here we are students doing all sorts of stuff, right? Learning from Toribio Chachil. Toribio is one of the coffee farmers in the Growers Association that we partner with. He has an altar on his land. It's a traditional Maya altar. There, if you can see in the picture, right, there's some soot and ash on the platform there. Someone was making offering at it not too terribly long ago. One of our students is translating for the non-Spanish speakers there, and they're learning not just about coffee farmers and coffee farmers' aspirations, but a much richer and very interesting cultural context that goes along with working in an indigenous community. Our mandate, or the standards of our direct trade approach, it emphasizes these relationships among everybody in the supply chain. We emphasize that that everyone benefit is a primary focus of our decision making, and that everyone learns. So we provide information about access to the coffee, to the market in the United States, and our partners learn a bit about life in the U.S. from us and our students. We learn a lot from them, and there's a lot of mutual benefit. That's the main goal of direct trade. Eliminate the intermediaries and ensure that everyone benefits. So the Growers Association we work with is one of the very few in the country that not only produces the coffee for export, but actually roasts and brews it on site. And there are a couple of North Central students there with Carlos. Carlos is the head roaster and the head coffee brewer, barista, at the Growers Association. And we're learning there about what a chemic's technique for our method for brewing. And the history of this, as we said, it's a history of the lab, starts with a brief history of the program. So we first started importing, it was roasted coffee initially in 2004. God bless them, the students were skeptical that everything the Growers Association and the mission group that was importing the coffee was suggesting about the coffee, about what benefits it paid. The students were skeptical, and that was the impetus for Professor Tallman, for Jerry to come to my office and say, hey, I heard you worked in Guatemala, and we need someone to help us on this trip to go learn something about coffee farmers. And before he could finish making the pitch, I was totally on board. We made that first trip in the fall of 2005, following the end of our old calendar, the old term calendar. We made that during our D term, our December term. And from 2005 to 2007, we continued to import the roasted coffee. This presented two real problems in terms of coffee being in transit for a long time and not having control over the roast. That's not really best practice in the coffee industry, to roast remotely from where you're going to consume the coffee. But it also meant a real opportunity for students to learn that wasn't quite in this. So after that 2007 trip, we began to roast the coffee locally with small roasteries in the west suburbs. And we continued from then until COVID came along. There was a trip during winter break and a trip during summer break. And that period was the longest in the trip, right, or in the history here, the 2007 to 19. And I'll turn to Jerry, we'll talk a little bit more about how we changed from there.
Yeah, there we go. Also back a little bit from the other slides too, one of the importances for if our students are going to understand all aspects of the value chain, they also have to be able to relate to them. And that's one of the reasons we've been trying to get students to travel with us real regularly. In fact, most of our leadership of our project have been very much encouraged to go, and if they're going to be involved, we want them to do that. Again, we've been importing the raw beans since 2007 now, and we've been looking over the years. We've looked at different ways to get them here. Every year we're still looking at new ways. We have a partnership that may not fit all of the best practices when you look at it, but it meets the requirements of all of our partners the way we do it right now, and that's important to us. It's more than just business. We have been roasting in this lab here, though. We outsourced it 2 or 3 different places, and over the years, and the control was not always there, or we had to do too big of batches or whatever. And a few years ago, we started working with our chairman of our board of trustees, Jim McDermott, and he was so amazingly supportive in helping us to get this happening. And we do have the roasting. We've been roasting here in the lab since 2019. Like I was saying earlier, most of that time, it seems like now, or over half of it, we've been in some kind of COVID restrictions, but it's still working real well, and we're continuing to build on it. Okay, with the opening of the lab, what happened is that we really brought something physical to campus with this project, and that this is where we're getting the hands-on portion, and then it brings in an excitement with students, and they've always been excited about coffee and the industry and everything, but opening the lab gave them something physical to see, and I think really increased our potential of helping for them to understand the other portions of it as well. So this is the physical part, but they also get to much better understanding of Guatemala and the suppliers and our customers because of this.
So at this point is where we get into what we think our students are learning and how that articulates to what employers seek. We rely on a study that was written by Christine Perugia and Jody Sanger, Gaining an Employment's Edge. And this was focused on study abroad experiences. But what this study did very nicely was aggregate a bunch of different surveys and government-issued reports on competencies that employers seek. So it aggregated a bunch of different material there, and then sorted it really nicely according to the National Academy of Sciences skills cluster, which makes it, I think, a really well representative. It represents really well what employers seek, and it makes it manageable in sorting it into areas. We're going to kind of work through this a bit here and talk a little bit about how our students are learning from it, and then get on to ways that we might collaborate with you and your students. So intrapersonal skills, right? We start with this one because it's kind of where they tend to be most developed on the far end of the supply chain. The intercultural skills of traveling and working in communities in different parts of the world, particularly when that community is really culturally distinct from the one the students are used to. And in that process, they learn some flexibility and adaptability, nothing like some culture shock to increase your self-awareness a bit. And we would suggest too, all through the supply chain, students are learning how to be responsible for themselves, to be good members of the team by being dedicated and exercising and developing a good work ethic. We also think that on that far end of the supply chain, that tolerance for ambiguity when we're in settings where things are not as clear as we think they are, and our understandings of the world maybe don't apply, certainly introduces this a bit of ambiguity for the students. But we think it also is all along the chain. I think Jerry will probably talk about that when we get a little bit further in that. Of course, right, there's the interpersonal skills around leadership and communication and teamwork. It's all there. This includes, right, of course, figuring out how to work with each other, how to resolve conflicts within the group when there are, and so forth. And students are getting a lot of those opportunities as we work here. Oops. And then the cognitive competencies around curiosity, confidence, problem solving, and so forth. Of course, the language skills are developed for those heritage speakers that tend to come with us and help us with the translating work. we hope it opens, that the curiosity starts because everyone's interested in coffee, or an awful lot of folks are interested in coffee. There's where the curiosity begins, and we like to see it develop as the project works. One of the students featured in one of the pictures earlier, I think Jerry would tell you, a few of the students featured in these pictures are all ones that came to us pretty quiet and maybe lacking a little of confidence, but boy, by the time they graduated, I think you know who I'm talking about, Jerry, by the time they graduated, really were very self-confident in a really reflective way, not confidence that didn't come from an amplified notion of self, but from the experience of working well with other folks. And I always like to point out when we get to this part of the survey, when I talk to my students in class about this, that what they're learning in their major is a very, very small minority of the competencies that that employers seek, and that an awful lot of those competencies are developed if they take the opportunities the college provides for them to do some practical learning outside the classroom. That's really where they're going to develop an awful lot of the other competencies that are critical in their employability. So this is our invitation to collaborate. As the focus here, well, last time when we offered our tour of the lab last ACCA symposium, we focused on thinking about other higher ed institutions in the area, and we shifted a little bit here to thinking about collaborating with groups that work with high school students. So we're going to divide this up into two categories, as Jerry has some experience working with local high schools in this, and I have been working a little bit with some interest groups and faith communities around fundraising. So Jerry, we're going to let you talk here a little bit about your work with high school students.
I'm going to pick a little bit on my own discipline here as we're doing this, and a little bit back to what Matt was saying earlier, was that as accountants, and myself included, they sometimes really want the answer to be able to be found in the textbook, and we've found that in some of our projects as they go back and they try to answer things the way they are in the textbook, and you know, some of the other skills there they don't realize that they need to have, and that they gain through this project. And this specific picture here is a group of college students, but they're coming from totally different disciplines and working together on this project. And with the project and what we have done we've worked with one high school class a little bit so far, and we're working with some other ones once we can get back to this. And that was an entrepreneurship class. And with it, our students worked with the students during the class on different parts of, we had an all-day workshop, or a half-day workshop, I guess, that they came in and they worked on different areas. And the production is probably production and packaging. The production and getting the packaging and the product ready is probably the easiest place to start. It's possibly the least of interest to them. It's real hands-on, but it's more manual labor, I guess, a little bit than what the other ones are. The other thing is that as Matt is going to be talking about some of the later projects, is that we have a lot of different ways that they can look at branding and what is important for this project. And that's a real struggle even for our students, is what is the most important? How do we brand this product so that we're meeting the markets that we think we should, and that they know about us. Promotion. Sometimes students have done so much work with social media, but they don't know how to use it from a business standpoint. So we work with them on that. The pricing is interesting, and we've even had discussions in the last few days on this between Matt and the other advisor and us, and Amy, and the pricing is also a way that students could work with us to look at outside of their own body sometimes. So pricing, even college students way too often think that the pricing is what they would be willing to pay rather than the person who would buy the product. Sales brings in some of those those communication skills, and what we find is that the students that are well prepared, though, they realize that they can sell something they're committed to. Yeah, the e-commerce also is something that sometimes they think they're more, they are prepared, but just not to use it in a way that can be useful in their careers and their lives after. And then the client service, when we talk about relationship project, it's relationship along the whole business cycle, including the customers, and being able to deal with them, and they get practice doing that.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting here, this is a lot of where I think some of the tolerance for ambiguity part of those competencies develop. This is where the intersection is, right? We have a coffee that comes into us a little bit more expensive than comparable specialty green bean coffee. And sometimes the standard model the students are coming to us with is, we need to talk to our partners about lowering their price. But at the same time, the whole point of the project is to empower people in need. This is one of our ACCA charges, is to empower people in need through business. And sort of thinking also about the relationship we have with the farmers and how much access we have to the coffee plots and to their stories and their views of the world, that relationship and the story about the farmers is a critical part of what the coffee is. And that's hard to monetize, and it makes it ambiguous and difficult for the students to sometimes grasp. I think we're at this sort of intersection of the project is not running a deficit. We make money. At the same time, we have these ongoing ethical and relationship obligations to our partners. And I think it's really fun to watch them struggle with, how do we maximize profit, but how do we also do this in an ethical way, and how do we recognize that part of what makes our coffee special and attractive to buyers is not easily monetized, and it's the story. It's the story of the relationship of the farmers. It's the story of their aspirations to make a better livelihood by producing a really high quality Arabica coffee. As I say, in terms of all the competencies, I think Jerry and I agree on this, that tolerance for ambiguity is the one that the practical learning really enhances for them.
And I learned early on in the project that because of those, it is frustrating sometimes to the students, and they come back with answers that you would think that we were a multi-million-dollar corporation when we're, and what their recommendations are, and which is really interesting.
So the other way that we've engaged high school students has been in programs attached to high schools or programs serving students of high school age. And I'll talk about those two. One involves a church faith group, or youth ministry, I should say. And you can see the students there are working on they work in a Habitat for Humanity program. We worked on an arrangement with them where we sold them bags of coffee at cost. They resold those at about a $6 per bag, I think, profit was what they were making, and that that they used that fundraising. Again, this is pre-COVID, right? This is for an earlier service trip that they were raising money around. We also are working with this one got cut off right. In fact, the last meeting I had with the environmental group that my daughter belongs to, she's a high school student, and the environmental group she belongs to, we were talking with them about branding a coffee for a fundraiser for their group. And we had introduced them through some documentary film clips to some of our coffee farmer partners and their discussion of agroforestry as a way for them to learn something about the growth of coffee and sustainable coffee production. But that got cut off right as the shutdown happened. But in any event, what we offer in this is to rethink that whole thing about fundraising for a program that's trying to do some social good. We would argue, right, that not only is our coffee, and we also sell some artisanal chocolate, and not only are these products, they taste better than the fundraising things that you're going to sell, whatever the chocolate you're selling, I think ours is better. But that because of this direct trade relationship, it means not only is your work in your environmental club or in the Appalachian Service Project or whatever it is you're doing, not only is there the social impact there, but from the beginning of the process, right, that the coffee that you sold meant the coffee farmer got twice as much that he or she would have gotten had they sold it in the conventional supply chain. That the chocolate you bought through us supports an indigenous female-owned business, and that is having profound, deep, if not wide, but very deep impacts in its community, employing indigenous women in a country where there are just not very many good cash earning jobs for anybody. So our argument here is, right, if you're going to raise funds for your organization to do social good by selling stuff and benefiting from the profit of that, then it ought to benefit everybody along the process. And that's where we come in. And I think, as I mentioned, right, this provides some real opportunities for you if you're the coordinator of a youth ministry or a business club or a business class or of a social justice organization of some sort or another, for your students to learn an awful lot through their work with our project. One of the things we've learned from COVID is that we can continue to have regular meetings with our partners in a way that we haven't before. We've talked to the coffee farmers in some ways more frequently now than we did before, which when we were every 6 months, we'd see them. Now there's a Zoom call every once in a while. This would be available for your organization. We would coordinate it with you, provide you a translator, and introduce you, and you get a chance for your students to hear directly from coffee farmers about the coffee that they're working to sell for their entrepreneurship class or whatever the organization is. So in those ways, right, all those competencies that we've discussed, and in terms of the mission of the project and its emphasis on empowering people by working with them in their projects to improve their livelihoods, provide a lot of learning and a lot of opportunities to think beyond our local experiences, to connect the local with the global. So here we resorted these things according to the last parts of our supply chain, the coffee lab part, and then distribution after that. And we have them with the activities the students do, and then what the competencies that they're working to develop. And I'll just say, we try to remind our students something that Professor Kelly, Carl Kelly, psychology, he once said. I kept it with me when I was working in the first year experience program when he ran it. Was, have your students think all the time about what they're doing and what kind of story it can build in a job interview. And I like to talk to our students about that every once in a while, to remind them, like, think about what you're doing now and how might that build a really good story for you to talk about in a job interview. And if they can link that story to these competencies, they become, I think, really standout candidates for the kind of jobs that they want to have. And we'll throw it open there to questions. And we say, right, the invitation here is, if you just want us to, pack up a bunch of bags of coffee for you to sell as a project, and within a business class, we can do that. If you have if you want your students to learn something about roasting, and if they want to develop their own label, and we can put it on a bag for you, and they can be involved in designing their own label. We can talk about blends and all sorts of ways that you all can enjoy I think what's been a very rewarding teaching and learning experience for us.
Anybody has questions, you can use the raise hand feature if you want, or you can just unmute yourself and ask. I think there's about 30 of us left, so that seems manageable enough that we can just talk like grown-ups.
Can I this isn't a question. One of the things that I found, it was really interesting when the high school class came here. I knew that college students were really interested in coffee. I didn't realize they were as interested in as high school as what they are. And when we did the project here, we talked about all aspects of coffee, including the social justice and the brewing and the other parts of it. And I was really excited about how much excitement they had to learn more about it. And it gave an opportunity for both our students to explain what they had learned on the project, but also for the other students to participate. And they really enjoyed the day.
I just remember being in high school. Of course, it was only 6 or 7 years ago. But when I was in high school, drinking coffee wasn't a thing. And I'm mindful of the fact that Jim McDermott is here with us, and I just can't help but wonder how Starbucks' influence, in terms of elevating coffee in the United States in particular, has something to do with high school or people who are younger being interested in coffee in different ways. So it's not surprising, Jerry, that you and I would be shocked by that, because I think it's a relatively recent phenomenon.
The amount that Starbucks influenced and saved the coffee industry was amazing. And that wasn't just for Jim either.
So there is David Cordero has a question he
Yeah.
put in the chat and asked if you could talk about the collaboration between the Black Student Association and Enactus, Black Magic Coffee. And then
Actually, the class that I'm working with, or first of all, this project came about by some of the Enactus students saying, what can we do in relation to the racial injustice and the issues that, rather than just saying, yeah, we agree with this or we don't, what can we do? What's little? And I teach a class that is an accounting class for in the leadership program for social entrepreneurship is the major group of it. And so I discussed this at the beginning of the semester, and our entire semester now has been working on developing this new product, and it's called Black Magic. And the idea of it is a couple or three things. One is to bring people's attention to ways that are positive that we can do things for the Black community. It was also, though, to show the connections between discrimination, whether it's the Black community here in the U.S. or the Maya community in Guatemala. And so what we did is we spent time trying to develop a new product. We went and they did research online to find for pricing, to find out other products that were being sold for a cause. And basically then they developed, they came up with the name Black Magic. The class itself, once we got started, attracted different students. So they were kind of coming and going a little bit at the beginning. And once and again, one of the things that we said from the class, though, is that we weren't going to put the strings out there. We wanted to do the project for the Black Student Association, and then they're making the decisions of where the profits go and all. And so we had to find a coffee that was grown by Black farmers. And so we have an Ethiopian coffee that we purchased, and we've got some Rwanda that has even better connections. And what they found, though, what was interesting was the best taste that they liked was a blend between the Ethiopian and the Guatemalan coffee. So it brought things back a little bit more than what we had even hoped. We're planning on this being an ongoing product. It isn't just a semester. So we're still growing. We still got some kinks that we have to work out, but we're just getting started. These students were so excited about doing the project, and I was excited.
Professor Cordero was good enough to drop the link in the chat too, directly to the Black Magic Coffee link for those interested. Aram is asking if you've done any outreach to the Guatemalan community in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area, and what about Guatemalan hot chocolate is his follow-up to that.
Yes, we have. In fact, we built a partnership with a weaving group, extended family weaving co-op that came about by virtue of a connection with a Kachikal man who used to work here on campus. You might not know that there was a Kachikal Maya man who worked on this campus a few years ago. And yes, we do have the artisanal chocolate that I mentioned is produced by a Quiche Maya woman. And her children are the 7th generation of her family who make it. She produces eating chocolate, but the primary thing we consume in my household, at least, is the drinking chocolate. And it's fantastic. It's 70% organic cacao. Our sweetener is all pure cane sugar, and it's really good.
Does anyone else have questions? I don't know if you're running out of steam yet, or if there's anything else you're wondering about. We did provide some links, and so feel free to explore those when you have time.
Hello, am I getting through?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I just on Mark Bartel, ACCA Executive Director. I don't want to interfere with the coffee discussion. It's been fascinating, but I do want to definitely give a big thank you to Stephen and Christine and all of the North Central people who were involved in organizing and hosting this wonderful day. It's been great. Thank you very much. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of the Board of Directors and the other 14 institutions expressing their gratitude. Thank you.
Oh, that's kind, Marv. Thanks so much. It really was Christine. It really was Christine. She's been fantastic. And so thank you all. It's a long day, but I know it was a fulfilling day. I can tell by the looks on the faces of those of you who have your camera on, and also just the engagement throughout the day, that it was worthwhile for you. And I would appreciate if those of us who are left here to give thanks to Jerry and Matt for giving us time and teaching us more and more about the coffee lab and the coffee project generally. So if you can use the reactions below, or just give a little wave. Thank you to those of you, to both of you for doing that. All right, well, I think we'll bring the meeting then to a close. Thank you all so very much for your engagement. We'll follow up next week with a link to the website when we get the recordings that we have available on there. Encourage you to share those with colleagues, and also remind you about the evaluation form. That means a lot to Christine and to me, to give us feedback so we can make it better. All right. Have a great rest of the weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Stephen.
Take care.
Bye.